I first came into college 2 years ago as a computer science and information security major. So those of you who have studied or are studying computer science know that the required classes you take in the beginning are just so riveting and not at all tedious. I was just talking to some of you this morning about how much we love data structures. So I was taking all these required classes, or starting to take them, and I thought, you know what I should do? Take more required classes in philosophy. But in all seriousness, that was not an intentional decision to make my life more difficult. It's actually a complete chance that I was even exposed to philosophy at all in my classes. My honors program requires classes based on the common good, which is the theme of our program's curriculum. And they seemed interesting enough, but I never thought that one of these classes could actually change my main course of study until Philosophy 102, Ethical Foundations. So I'll admit to all of you now, as I later admitted to the professor of this course, who I'm very grateful for, I was less than thrilled to be taking a philosophy class. I had never taken one, did not intend to, but tried to keep an open mind, and as the class went on, I had a new problem. I loved it, and I had no idea what to do with that. Just kept thinking, stick to computer science, keep it simple, don't stray so far off from what you came here to study. But I stopped caring about that and decided that no knowledge could ever be useless. And I also learned that it wasn't far off at all. I think studying philosophy has made me a better computer scientist. So last spring, I officially declared my second major in philosophy, and I took a philosophy class called Symbolic Logic. I don't think any other class has ever just clicked so instantly in my mind like that. It's also called the algebra of logic because it takes patterns built into almost every language, like validity and consistency, and turns them into symbols and formulas. It definitely helped that I had seen some of the concepts we learned about, like truth tables, logic symbols, and logic circuits, in a class for my computer science degree, discrete math. So it turns out that the same rules of logic that exist in philosophy and language also govern computational logic. So I got to thinking, when did philosophy become so mathematical? It always has been. When I first learned about utilitarianism, it was described to me as a moral calculus with this greatest happiness principle that quantified the goodness of actions based on the greatest amount of happiness and the least amount of suffering for the most number of people. Then later I learned about Kant and deontology, study of ethics based on duty and obligation. Kant fascinated me because he thought of morality like a mathematical constant. The way he defined categorical imperatives reminded me of constant variables. Don't just treat others how you want to be treated, but act as if your actions could become universal law. The subject of what the concept of beauty actually means is still highly philosophically debated, but Aristotle said beauty can be measured and equated it to definiteness and symmetry, which he said the mathematical sciences explain. But even beyond this more concrete intersection, I think that I've learned my own philosophical process is very similar to my computational one. What is philosophy if not the reiterating and debugging of ideas and thoughts once thought to be true? And I also think that both areas of discipline are the art of taking a huge problem, some seemingly incomprehensible to the human mind, and breaking them down to smaller pieces, whether that's by means of algorithm and code or writing and speech. I can think of so many instances in both philosophy and computer science where I was presented with a problem, thought I could very clearly solve it one way, only to have to consider other ideas and methodologies that I'd sometimes never even previously heard of. So I also found a way to incorporate computer science into my philosophy education by focusing on technology ethics. I wrote a paper on hacktivism, which is hacking for social or political causes. Is this a modern example of the type of civil disobedience that Thoreau advocated for, or should hackers never violate technology laws, regardless of cause? Lastly, I'd like to turn your attention to perhaps one of the most pressing issues that we face today: artificial intelligence ethics. To quote Plato, "To one it is given to create the things of art, and to another to judge what measures of harm and of profit for those that shall employ them." He was talking about the invention of writing, but it's incredible how transferable all these old concepts are to modern issues, because it still rings true that those who develop technology are often not representative of those who are feeling the full effects of them. Just because we can create something doesn't mean that we should. The potential harm that technology can do should be just as thought through as all the good. Now, studying philosophy has certainly further opened my eyes to the moral obligation that we have with the future of technology. And it has further affirmed that my future is in technology, that I will always look at through a philosophical